going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Agent and the Fan podcast. I'm Chris Leible. Lu Columna is my partner. Lou, how you doing, pal?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Just relaxing today, man. Just trying to enjoy the last sunshine that I'm going to see for a while because it's going to be not so good the next couple of days.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Well, unfortunate, but we got a busy weekend. I have a busy weekend of basketball. Every weekend's basketball right now.
And you're
Between
doing baseball, right?
Yeah, we got baseball training tonight, and then on Mondays and Fridays are baseball training, and then so that's what we have this time of year, and then the weekends are filled with basketball games and lots of them.
Yeah, we got
So,
basketball. We got basketball and lacrosse. But let me ask you a question. Speaking of baseball training with kids, what do you do in your training sessions? What do you focus on?
so we turn it over to the facilities that we're using. So, generally speaking, just to the different aspects of the game, obviously pitching, obviously swinging the bats, and then some defensive things and some throwing and things of the nature. That's what I'm working on with my 9U team. The facility that we're working with, the 11Us, we're doing some other similar stuff, obviously a little more advanced for our team, but yeah, just a little bit of everything. And just I always say, like, for me, the winter, this time of year, you want to just get the kids back on the field, get them back in the groove, and then this way, God willing, at least here in the Northeast where we are, by the time March comes around, and hopefully there's no snow on the field and the fields are playable, we can get on the field and hit the ground running, literally.
No, I agree, man. We've been trying to do a little bit of that. It's funny. My parents are coming from DR in a couple of weeks. There's a game that the kids in the street play there called Bitilla, right? And it's basically the cover, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know it is.
So I told my mother, bring me a bunch of those because she uses the water filters over there, and I want the kids to play with that because I grew up playing with that, and it's great for hand-eye coordination, right? Because it's
but where did it get you?
Huh?
Where did it get you?
I didn't have the skills. Oh man. I caught that one. It didn't get me anywhere.
No, I hear you.
But I remember playing that, and it's funny. I was talking about this because I have this game on my phone that the kids play. This cricket game. It's like an animation game they play on my phone whenever they have it. But I remember, like, in DR, you play La Placa. I don't know if you remember that, like with the license plates. And again, it's like, wow, like all these kind of, like, I'm like, no wonder these Dominican players are such great low ball hitters. Vladdy, because you used to have to hit it from the bottom. So I think I want to start doing that. Like, I have a long enough yard that I can do that.
Why not?
Something different. But yeah, my mom, I said, save all of them, bring them with you, because I'm going to start practicing with the boys in the yard, because I think that's great for like I said, for hand.
Yeah, we do stuff with a little ball sometimes and stuff like that. So I mean, it's a similar idea, So
it'll be fun.
So we got that ahead, but I think one thing I wanted to talk about was the Hall of Fame, because there's been a lot said about the Baseball Hall of Fame. I do want to talk about the Football Hall of Fame too, and I want to get to that in a second. But let's talk about so obviously Scott Rolen is the sole inductee. As a fan, what's your thoughts on Scott Rolen getting in?
I thought he was a Hall of Famer always. I mean, this guy played a great third base.
Yep.
He was a great, I don't say great hitter, but he's a very, very good hitter, bordering on great, but like, and that's for me, one of the things that when I look at these ballots, I automatically say Hall of Famer or not. Like, that's my take on it, right? To me, Rolen, Hall of Famer. Believe it or not, to me, Jimmy Rollins, Hall of Famer, right? Edgar Martinez, Hall of Famer. Todd Helton, to me, is a Hall of Famer. And I know there's all this stuff with, he plays in Colorado, but I'm like, then don't put a team in Colorado, right? Like, like, you're going to have players that are going to be great that play there, that to me is like the thing that bothers me the most, and it's the same argument with DH, with DH guys, right? Like, obviously David is a different story, But like, you can't, if this is a position in baseball.
No, I agree. I'm saying it, I said the same thing about football. I mean, Ray Guy finally got in as a punter. I mean, it's part of the, you
It's a
gotta,
game.
there's got to be a standard for it's part of the game. It's an important part of the game too. It might not be the, the most glamorous role on a football team, but it's if you have a good punter, it's a very effective means on your team um, to win games. So,
Without question.
but no, I hear you. I think to me, it's not about Colorado or the skewed stats of Colorado. I just, again, I think there are two ways I personally look at it. And it's no knock against Scott Rolen, Todd Helton, those types of players. I think they're terrific ball players. They're great players. Okay. But to me, they're not Hall of Fame players, in my opinion. Okay. But there's two ways to look at it. In my opinion, they're not Hall of Fame players. But by the standard that we're setting nowadays, they are.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's one of those, it's very tricky for me. Now, I wouldn't have never opened the floodgates in the beginning, and I would have kept it very exclusive if it was me running the Hall of Fame by myself and doing all the voting myself and all that stuff. So, but that said, I've never once looked at Scott Rolen and said, there's a Hall of Famer. And you did. So, I mean,
Yeah,
it just goes to show you it's a different opinion. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I think he's a terrific ball player. He's one of
without
the
question.
best players, of his time, without a doubt. The question is, like, how much of the best did you have to be? Do you have to be, to me, you have to be a dominating force. To me, he wasn't, but again, it's not taking away anything from him because he was a great, great baseball player.
So what? All right. So this is a good question for you. A good question for you. What do you take? What's your take on what's the minimum amount of time that you have to be dominant? Is it 5 years? And also on the flip side, that lifer who's been playing for 21 years, 20 years, 18
The
years.
compilers.
Yeah, because to
No,
me, if a
here's the thing.
compiler, if you're still playing, like, to me, it's different. This is the difference, right? If you're a compiler and you're batting, you used to bat 290 and now you're batting 220 and you're just sticking around. That's a different story. Maybe you're batting 270, 260, you're still solid. That doesn't bother me.
Look, here's the thing. I mean, to me, it's a feel. It's simple as that. It's a feel. So either I feel it or I don't feel it. There are some guys I feel it and say, like, look, this guy's era was so dominating. Wasn't as many years as this or that, but that's a guy to me is a Hall of Famer. To me, it's an iconic type of guy. Again, I'm not taking anything away from Scott, or maybe you say I am taking away from him. I don't know, but I don't. My intention isn't to take anything away from Scott Rolen. I just don't personally see him as that type of a player. Um, Again, it's one of those things though. But I think once these people start getting in, though, then you have to start looking at other things. And the question is, you start looking back at, again, we grew up in a certain era. You're a Don Mattingly guy. I am certain of that, although we probably never discussed it.
For sure.
I mean, I'm a Keith Hernandez guy. I mean,
I was just gonna say, I was just gonna say
you
Keith
can
to the end.
easily make a very good case for both those guys. Um, as strong, you can make a case they are above a Scott Rolen type of player, Dale Murphy and guys like that. There's plenty of guys that you could go back and say, whoa, this is the type of guy, and not even blink an eye. But those guys didn't get in, and do they deserve it? Will they eventually?
I
See.
tell you, I'll tell you what. Just Donnie aside, Keith deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. To me, I look at Keith Hernandez, he's a Hall of Famer. I mean, if you have Ozzie Smith in the Hall of Fame, you got to have Keith Hernandez in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, I think Keith's an interesting one. Again, there's certain things. Dave Parker is another one.
Dave Parker,
I mean, Dave Parker had some really great numbers and was a dominating player of his era, champion and all those things. I mean, and MVP and all those things under his belt. Where do you draw the line and where does it go? I don't know, but very, very tricky. But there's a lot of A lot of great players. You know, Dave Parker, you compare him to like a Jim Rice. I mean, he compares very favorably to Jim
Yeah.
Rice if you look at it closely.
So, and which also bothers me is why did it take the Veterans Committee or this other committee? Fred McGriff should have been in a long time ago.
Fred McGriff to me, again, he's one of these guys as a fan, you know, you're not but if you go back, and I've had this discussion with several major leaguers and several, you know, analysts and people that I have close relationships with, off, you know, off the out, out, not professionally, outside of the professional business. um you know, there's not too many guys in the game where you could literally go in 30 homers, 100 RBIs every year, automatic. Fred McGriff did it, and he did it for a long time. And for that, to me, is an automatic slam dunk guy, just like I thought Lee Smith was an automatic slam dunk guy that took a long, long time to get in. Um, you know, again, there's just
What's your take on Jeff Kent?
see, Jeff Kent's a Hall of Famer,
He
and
should
again,
be
I
there.
had Jeff. Jeff's a guy I've known through the years, and you know, I had him with the Mets when I was working with the Mets. I worked with him. Um, Jeff's he's a good dude. He's just not a you know. It's almost like a Bill Belichick type of guy. He's a
Yeah,
great guy. He just doesn't really. He's not down with the BS. He's not
yeah.
interested in it.
And this
He's
is
kind of
what
into
bothers
his
me about
business.
the voting with a lot of these guys. And it's not everyone, right? To be fair, but a lot of these guys, as you know, hold grudges. And
Yeah.
this guy didn't talk to me all the time.
Well, Jeff's a quiet guy. He
Yeah,
just wasn't an engaging like person, but that shouldn't be held against him. But you look at his numbers and look what he's done, and look at, I
phenomenal.
mean, Jeff Kent to me is a no-brainer. He should be in there. And the fact that his numbers are so far off is just it's an injustice to me. So I
My,
don't know. We're gonna see what's gonna happen, and if things will change. I've got a personal stake in some guys coming up now too, and you know, I know that you know, Bobby Abreu is he doubled his votes this year,
yeah,
which was great, and I think he's gonna keep getting more and more votes, and he could be a guy like a Fred McGriff,
yeah,
who I think at some point people are gonna realize and go like, look what this guy did, because I think Bobby was so far ahead of his time. I think if Bobby played today, he would be looked at you know, as like some of the, you know, some of these top guys are looked at now. He wasn't because of you know, because of the time he played. But I
yeah.
think when people start looking at I mean, he's an analytics darling, literally. His metrics are
Anytime
ridiculous.
I was watching a game that he played, whether it was Phillies or Yankees, you would blink and it would be 3-2. It would be a 3-2 count.
Yeah, I mean, and that was, I mean, but at the time it was just starting to, you know, become a thing, you know, but he was doing it on his own and naturally, and he just, you know, just the type of hitter he wasn't. We got to, you know, Lou, we got to get Bobby on here to talk
Sure.
about this, because I think he's, and the thing about Bobby is certainly is a gifted player. You're not a 30-30 guy without having talent, but Bobby is really smart when it comes to hitting. I have him talk to the boys sometimes about it and stuff, and like my kids, and I mean, he's just, I mean, I've sat in hotel rooms with him with young players, and just genius. I mean, a pure
Yeah,
genius when it comes to hitting.
I agree.
And then obviously, you know, he was stealing bases and hitting bombs, and he's got a gold glove, and so I mean, you know, Bobby's a guy I think is going to get more and more consideration as the years go on, and I think he'll keep, um, um, you know, growing momentum, and I'm hoping, you know, that'll continue.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. To put a bow tie in all this, there's two comments I have. One, Harold Baines does not belong in the Hall of Fame. Like that to me is the biggest one. Like he was a nice
Well,
player.
it's not the biggest one. It's not the biggest one because there's
Oh
other
man,
guys.
I
I don't know.
think for me it's Harold Baines, but and again to put a bow tie in
Well,
all
you
this.
might want to look up. You might want to look up Rick Farrell.
Okay.
Look up Rick Farrell if you want to know the biggest one.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you might want to look up. I mean, there's definitely there's definitely some shaky ones, but
No, no, I agree. I agree. And the other thing, in the Hall of Fame is what I'm interested to see is in the next few years is those relievers. And I'm not talking about the closers. I'm talking about, the setup man, because now, as we discussed earlier, those guys are just as important, right? And it's a position, you know.
Well, we'll see. We're going to see how that's going to go because,
Yeah,
like you said, the game is changing. I think if back in the '60s or whatever or '70s, if you weren't starting, then you just weren't. There's something wasn't right with you.
yeah,
Then he became the area of specialization, and that through the '80s and '90s and to the point where we are now, where there's literally a specialization for everything.
for everything. But
So it'll
before
be
that
interesting to see how
happens,
it keeps evolving. But I think you have to look at certain people. And you said, Billy Wagner. A lot of people made a good face for Billy Wagner, and Billy Wagner's got some great numbers. But again, look at John Franco. John Franco, no one's, he hasn't gotten enough because he's got things that Billy Wagner's never gotten to. And
so
John Franco,
do you think, in your opinion, does John Franco have to come in for you to justify Billy Wagner? In your opinion?
I think John Franco has to be considered if you're considering. Again, I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to answer with another. I answer your question with another question. I think if you're literally seriously considering Billy Wagner, and I believe he should be seriously considered, then you have to start seriously considering John Franco because John Franco, he wasn't a Aroldis Chapman 102-mile-an-hour closer, but he got the job done. He did it for a long, long time.
Yeah, I think people
And
forget those Cincy years is what it is.
people forget the Cincy years. And then he came to New York and did it for the Mets and did it for championship teams with the Mets as well. And you're talking about 400 plus saves again. And I think I saw some, I've seen so many stats in the past couple weeks, but somebody put like, I think the stat line, and again, I don't have it in front of me, but like of Billy Wagner versus Mariano Rivera, and Billy Wagner's regular season numbers were way better than Mariano Rivera's. And you have John Franco. I've seen John Franco, so now all of a sudden, again, maybe not as dominating in terms of strikeouts and things, but got the job done and did it for a long, long time. And I'm not just saying this because he's a good friend of mine, but Johnny was an effective,
Without a doubt.
closer for a long, long time. And again, going back to your original point, do you get rewarded for being able to do that and doing that for as long as he did do it? I think you do. And you could make a similar case if we're going to take a step to football and talk about like a Vinny Testaverde or someone like that. Again, someone who probably people aren't putting down as they're on their Hall of Fame list. But if you look at his numbers, he was able to do it for a long, long time. And you got to give credit to people like that for being able to do it because obviously it's not an easy thing to do to be able to be that at that level for as long as someone like Vinny Testaverde did, or in baseball, John Franco.
Yeah, no, I agree. Listen, I'm one of those guys. I was talking about this the other day with a buddy of mine. If I was a player in any sport, you would have to tear the uniform off of me for me to retire. Right? Like I'm not one. I wouldn't be one of these guys like, oh, I had a great life. I've got a great career. I want to leave on top. No, I want to be batting like 190 and like Lou, you got to go. Like that's how much I love the game, and that's how it would be to see those guys stay that long, right, and be productive. Now talking football, Vinny. I mean, he played so well throughout his career and not given a lot of credit.
Mm-hmm.
The Jet years were really good.
Yeah.
Obviously the Buccaneer years were so, but to me, Vinny was one of those guys. It's like I agree with you. He's in the hall. In my opinion, he's in the Hall of
I'm
Fame
saying, like, I'm not saying you put him in. And again, I mean, I have to analyze it and all that stuff. I'm just saying his name has to come up into the conversation,
without a
and
doubt.
it never does.
Yeah.
But speaking of the Football Hall of Fame, so they have their 10 finalists. That's coming up, I think, in next week, or next week or the week after. I guess leading up to the NFL honors, leading up to the Super Bowl, a couple days before the Super Bowl. And I just want to give a special shout out to Reggie Wayne,
Oh, I
Andre
love it.
Johnson, and Devin Hester. Those guys should go in together, 3 of them together this year. I'm hoping that they'll let him in, and, again, I'm not trying to be a hometown homer here. Look at Reggie Wayne's stats compared to the receivers. Look at Andre Johnson's stats. They both deserve it, and Devin Hester's the greatest kick returner in the history of the NFL, and you can't have a Hall of Fame without the greatest kick returner in the history of the NFL. He's gotta be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
100% agree with that. Reggie Wayne is a Hall of Famer, period. End of story. Devin Hester, again, to your point, that's a position. Nobody played it better than him. He's a Hall of Famer. I totally agree with that. But the one thing I will say about the NFL is that they tend to, put in a lot more guys and are better at that, in my opinion, than
Well, there's a
MLB.
lot more players.
Yeah.
You got twice as many players.
Twice as many players. But Devin Hester, 100%. Reggie Wayne, 100%.
Andre.
Andre, 100%. I mean, that to me, I would probably see Devin Hester as the one if I had to put one who wouldn't get in just based on whatever, and it would be a travesty because Devin Hester to me should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he's going to get in eventually. And then, we have other things. We have some other ones to do, but so I think the Hall of Fame's interesting. It's always a spirited debate, especially when it comes to baseball. People seem a lot more passionate about it. But I think you're right, though. I think the people that, and again, you have a different view on the Hall of Fame than I do, which is interesting because we've never really discussed this off air. So it's interesting that you see those guys like Todd Helton again, great player, very good hitter. I mean, just obviously a great athlete. He was Peyton Manning's backup quarterback at Tennessee. I just wouldn't have thought him as a Hall of Famer. I would think of him as a great hitter who certainly has his place in the game and certainly in hockey's history. But, again, it's one of those things. He didn't get it. Next year, I see Adrian Beltre is, I guess, the big name.
Yeah, he's a no-brainer to me.
He's a no-brainer to me, too. I know. Do you know Adrian at all?
No, I don't know. I don't know Adrian.
So I know Adrian for a long time. He's one of the greatest guys just like what you see is what you get. Such a great dude. I love Adrian Beltre. Just one of the nicest, most humble, funny, subtly funny characters. I love Adrian Beltre. Great. And then obviously I also have
don't touch his head.
No, he doesn't like to be but and obviously Jose Reyes is Lame Laza is up for next year as well. So we'll see where it goes from there. But it's got some great numbers. Maybe unfortunately some injuries curtailed some of the top flight stats, like 3,000 hits, because I think he would have had a very good chance. He lost a lot of prime years to some injuries, but I mean, it's gonna be next year. Will be another fun year, I guess.
I think it will. I think at least a couple of the guys who didn't quite make it this year will probably go in next year. I think to me, Adrian is first ballot.
Yeah, I think so too.
I
mean, offensively, defensively, a guy. Also, it's funny. We talked about Vinny Testaverde in football. Adrian Beltre was a guy who came in lots of hype. I mean, he was a huge bonus baby who had some controversy around his signing. I guess that had nothing to do with him, but with his signing when he first signed. But he lived up to every bit of it. Became just one really. I mean, I can honestly say, and you could say it, and I know it was touched on a little bit this year. Really, one of the best third basemen to ever play the game. Period. End of story.
I agree. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. For a moment in his career, I thought when he went to Seattle, I was like, man, he's going to purgatory. Like, I don't think I didn't think much of him, but man, when he went to Texas, he just, took over. He was always a great third baseman. Period.
Great fielder, but he could really hit and said like a real leader on teams and played on some championship teams there and just an all around great player and it was discussed with Rolen. There really haven't been a lot of great third baseman, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why that is, but if you look back and look at some of the things, Mike Schmidt and George Brett in that era was well represented, but really before that, and Eddie Matthews was a great one, and Brooks Robinson, and you're talking about some, the old home run hitter, Home Run Baker, the guy would hit like 9 home runs a year.
9 home runs. Yeah, I think 12 was like his max.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Mike Pagliarulo should be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, Mike Pagliarulo is a hurricane, so I agree with you.
Pags. That was one of my favorites growing up.
He was a fan favorite with the Yankee fans in the 80s.
What was it? The Yankee announcer, he said that was his favorite name to pronounce. Now batting.
Oh, Bob Shepard.
Mike Pagliarulo.
Yeah.
Love Pags. But
my brother always reminds me, one time Bob Murphy, the old Mets broadcaster, who I got to work with once. I mean, I listened to him, as a kid, and then I got to work with him once I started working in the front office. One time, my brother insists that he called Mike Pagliarulo Jim Pagliarulo, and he talks about it all. He still talks about it.
Love it.
Matt, if you're watching this, can you confirm this with the show at some point, please? Did that really happen? Did he really call him Jim Pagliarulo?
That's hysterical.
I don't know.
Probably so.
Maybe. Murph might have gotten one confused every once in a while.
Oh my God. Murph and Rizzuto definitely got their names confused a lot.
Well, Murph was a little more professional than Phil. Definitely more professional than Phil.
He definitely was more professional than the Scooter, man. But listen, nobody was better than the Scooter. Nobody was.
Well, my dad really did not like the Scooter. He was against him, and he would scream at him at the TV when he was a homer. When he was being a homer. Yeah, my dad couldn't stand it. He would scream at the TV and yell at him and say bad things about him.
Did he scream at him when he was leaving in the 6th inning so he can beat the traffic?
No, he was happy he would leave. He used to say that Bill White, the old Yankees, other than that, because it's funny. So growing up in New York, the Mets had 3 announcers. That was it. There was nothing else with the 3 announcers, and the Yankees had 3 announcers, right?
Yep, they had Bill White,
Rizzuto, and Frank Messer. And then the Mets had Ralph Kiner and Bob Murphy, and they had this guy Lindsey Nelson, but Lindsey Nelson had left, I guess, when I was really little. But it was a 3-man team, and that's what you heard. So until modern era or whatever you want to say, but those were the literal voices of the teams when we were little kids. So you just were into it. But for me, it was exciting because I eventually got to work with Murph and Gary Cohn and now Howie Rose, but Ralph Kiner was as nice as he come. Tim McCarver was someone who really helped teach me the game of baseball, and then Tim, he mentioned me in his book, and awesome. Really cool. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, Fran Healy was another one who he actually worked both ways. He started with the Yankees, ended up with the Mets,
so and Fran ended up. And Tim McCarver. Seaver and Tim McCarver ended up playing
go with the Yankees. Yeah. And then like Tim, Tim ended up I became very close with Tim and Ralph and all those guys, and it was it was great for a kid, who grew up in New York to end up being, on the level with them or whatever. Pretty wild stuff. Never would have thought.
So Tim McCarver, how pissed off was he really at Deion Sanders?
Oh, he was definitely pissed at him. That was a incident you're talking about when he kind of called out Deion during the World Series, right?
Yeah.
Deion was on the Braves at that point.
Yeah.
And he'd been playing with the Falcons at the same time, and he kind of called him out on it. And Deion, they won, right? They won. He poured
they won. It was the champagne that he.
Yeah, and he was just doing it. And he was like, "Oh, you're a real man." Oh man, that was bad.
He was like, "You're a real class act, Deion.
You're a real class act. You're a real class act, Deion, or whatever." Yeah, Tim was tough. Tim was tough, but he was really nice to me. Once I got to know him, he was great. And like I said, he was nice enough to mention me in his book and stuff. And then he would always ask me to do different things for him. He was a character.
But the one thing though about all of these guys, I mean, even Phil. I mean, we joke around Phil Rizzuto, but they knew the game.
Yeah.
And Bill White,
Oh,
talk.
Bill White was well, Bill
Oh,
White eventually became the president of the National League
yeah,
after
yeah,
that.
yeah. He was just
I mean, he was
amazing, man.
he was really knowledgeable guy, very smart. Ralph Kiner was I mean, he was known for kind of his bloopers, but Ralph Kiner was a genius when it come to hitting
Yeah,
and the game. I mean, he knew the game inside and out, so did Tim. I mean, Tim, like I said, my dad, taught me the game, but really Tim really refined it because I learned so much from watching him and having him explain things to me and saying, "Oh, this is why they did this," or "This is why this is a good move," or "Why I don't agree with this one," or whatever it was. So pretty cool.
that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, this is fun stuff. Fun stuff. So, Chris, let's talk about the NFL playoffs, man. This is going to be one hell of a week. One hell of a week.
Well, yeah, I mean the final four, if you will, for the NFL. For me, about a month and a half ago, I made my predictions. I picked the Bengals and the Niners. I felt like those were the two teams to beat. I'm sticking with those two teams right now. Um,
I actually agree with you on that. I agree with
I
you on
feel
that.
like the Niners, even though the Eagles had a great showing this weekend, I feel like the Niners are just a better team all around. I think their defense is insane. And I think, as much as I have a lot of respect for the Eagles quarterback and their receivers and stuff, the Niners just have a more balanced attack, and having
Yeah.
McCaffrey and Debo and guys like that are great, and their defense is stacked, and they're gonna throw a monkey wrench at the Eagles, I think, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Here's the only thing I will say about the 49ers that I feel. Everything you said is 100% correct. But there's going to come a point in time, whether it's this week or the Super Bowl, that Purdy is going to he's going to have to win you the game. So that's going to be the question is, if that game is, 14-14, a 3-point game one way or the other, is he going to be able to carry you
Maybe,
for
but
those
I
drives?
mean, he passed
That
every test so far,
Yeah,
and I feel like he's good enough to get it done, and we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that that is necessarily the case. Maybe you're right. I mean, it makes sense, but who knows? I mean, their defense is outstanding. They have so many weapons on offense, and they can do so many different things with them. McCaffrey can come out of the backfield and catch balls.
yeah.
Debo can go in the backfield and run balls. Kittle has been such a safety blanket for him.
Oh
Was
my
such a
god!
you
And
know
I tell you what, we never talk about NFL trade deadline deals, right? But McCaffrey, wow, like
well, there's very rarely a trade like that, and
exactly.
for McCaffrey, who people kind of forgot how good he was because he's been so banged up the last couple of years. For him to come back home to San Francisco, where he played his college ball, and for him to do what he's done over there with these guys and just complement that offense, because Elijah Mitchell could probably start for half the teams in the league and be very, very good, and he still gets his burn. But
Yeah,
McCaffrey is just such a weapon. I mean, it's just a great offense, and Kittle, and like I said, and then that defense with between the line and the
Bosa is playing
linebackers
unbelievable.
are unreal. So I feel like really good about that team. And to get to the Bengals, people keep overlooking them. They don't care where they play. They just go and take care of business. And as Joe Burrow says, about himself, and I'll say it about him, is that he's that guy.
He's
He
that
just
guy.
is. And I love a lot of these young quarterbacks, and Pat Mahomes being one of them.
Yeah,
But I'm sorry, Pat Mahomes on one leg doesn't compare to
no,
Joe Burrow.
no,
And
no question.
I think a lot of I give him a ton of credit for being out there. And Pat is somebody, I think we've talked about this, but I mean, I've known Pat since I've known Patrick since he's a baby,
He's a
literally,
baby.
because I had Pat Mahomes on the Mets with me when I was over there in the front office, and Patrick was running around, the stadium and the field and stuff. But I have nothing but respect for him. He's a great kid and a great player. Um, but Joe Burrow is as well,
Yeah,
and Joe Burrow is healthy, and Patrick Mahomes is leg is going to
He's banged
limit
up.
him. It's going to limit his that mobility is it's going to hurt him.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine it not. And then you got these guys, Hendrickson and Hubbard, these guys coming at him, and then you know, they just seem to be. They can seem to have an answer for everything. They've lost 3 linemen in the past 3 weeks,
Yeah, yeah,
and they don't even miss a beat. I
yeah.
mean, Burrow isn't having an issue, and he keeps saying, "I'm him," and he is him.
I mean, listen, the one thing I love about this year is that you got 4 fresh faces. I love that. I love that. I mean, this is, listen, the Aaron Rodgers of the world and the Tom Brady's, they've had their time and they still may have their time, who knows?
Mhm.
But I just love that, that now we're seeing that new wave, right?
You know, when
Burrow.
they had that said the thing, I think they had said that Mahomes was the oldest
Yeah,
quarterback in the AFC playoffs.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy
That's
for us 'cause
crazy.
we feel like he's like, he's 2 years out of his rookie year or whatever.
Exactly. Listen,
Um,
I don't feel bad, for Patrick. He's going to be fine, and he's going to have plenty of other opportunities
yep.
down the road. I mean, you never know, of course, but Joe Burrow, man, he's just been like, I just there's a feeling about him this year, like
He just has it's his talent and the talent around him, but his attitude
charisma. He has
and his
charisma.
charisma is just it's
Even,
off the charts,
have
and
you
it's
seen
just
even the way he dresses? Have you seen those pregame like?
yeah, he
Like I
doesn't
just
give a
love
crap.
that. He has a swag about him that I
Yep.
like.
But I mean, I have to tell you, that's Michael and my Michael Ray. He reminds me of my son. Michael Ray is like that. He just doesn't give a crap, and he just, you know. So I mean, from my mouth to God's ears, but
Yeah,
just but
yeah.
that's the way he is. He's so funny. He just makes me laugh. But like, he reminds me a lot of him. He just, he throws a touchdown pass, and he tells me I'm him. And he says it on the air, I'm him. And then they ask him, he's like, "Did I say that?" And I actually believe him. He doesn't even know what he's even saying. So
Oh my
crazy.
god! I think they told. I think I read this or heard this last week. They were talking to Burrow and he was saying that like, hey, your window to win. He's like, my window's every year. Like
Yeah.
I was like, it's like you gotta love that about the guy. But
No.
more importantly, he could back it up,
Exactly.
unlike Dax.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, I said like the Cowboys had a great game, their first game, and I give them a lot of credit for doing what they did because I didn't think they could do it, but
I, I, I thought they were
but
gonna be Brady.
but I mean, I just had a feeling that was the end of the line for them. I
Yeah.
didn't expect them to. Some people were saying, "Hey, if they do the same thing against the Niners, they could beat them." I didn't see that happening at all, and it obviously did not. So
I don't look at Dak as to me as an elite quarterback. I think he's a very good quarterback,
I
but
think
I
he's good.
wouldn't
Yeah.
put him. Me just personally, I wouldn't put him as elite. He's a great quarterback.
I
He's
mean,
good, but
look,
you got to win those
Mahomes,
games. You got to win those
Mahomes. I
games.
mean, to me, Mahomes and Burrow and Herbert and guys like this, those are the guys that I think are
Zach
the.
Wilson,
What's that? Zach
Zach
Wilson.
Wilson.
I mean, Josh Allen. There's definitely a handful of guys
Yeah,
at
yeah,
this point, and then there's certain guys that are knocking on the door, like a Jalen Hurts. I mean, Jalen Hurts
man,
can do this again. I mean,
yeah.
you're looking at, or if he takes them to the promised land this year, which again, I'm picking the Niners, but I wouldn't put it past them by any means.
100%. That's the one thing I would say about these four. Any one of them could be the one.
I agree.
Any one of them. And this to me why it's so. I mean, last year's playoff run was amazing. Like every game was amazing.
Yeah.
If you remember, every game was like,
Yeah.
and then obviously the Bills Chiefs game. But this year it's a different kind of. It's been different, but in a good way because
Yep.
you're seeing the evolution of these young guys stepping up. And I didn't give Joe Burrow a chance in Buffalo with the weather being the way that it was.
See, I had them
You
all the way.
know, and Josh, being Josh, but you know what I mean? Like he came through. He came through, and that's a sign to me. That's a sign of a champion.
Yep.
That's a sign of a champion. So where this will land, we'll find out. February 12th.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to this weekend. Should be great. No basketball conflicts, thank God, finally for the first time all year. And I'm looking forward to be able to relax and enjoy it and all that stuff. But listen, Lou, I think that wraps it up for us. I don't have anything else right now. Do you got anything else to close out with?
Not much other than you got to watch The Mayor of Kingstown
The
on.
Mayor of Kingstown. What is that?
It's
I've
a
never heard of it.
it's a series on Paramount Plus. Jeremy Renner, who was badly injured a few weeks ago, is on it. But I've heard great things about it, so that's what I'm going to kind of do over the weekend. And I'll let you know during the next show.
What is the premise of the show?
He plays uh like he runs a jail or a prison or something, like a prison rather, or something like that. I've been hearing like rumblings about it, but I'm excited to go see it. It's on its second season. So I'm gonna binge the first one, and then I'll let you know, like I said, during our next show,
So
how it is.
I'm going to tell you what I did this last couple of weeks. I went back in the Wayback Machine and I went back to Eastbound and Down.
I remember that.
It is it's such a great show. I just love it so much. I just finished it yesterday. I have to be careful because you can't watch it with the kids around, but such a good show. I loved it. I mean, definitely you could relate to him, not really, but like I can relate to baseball players
Yeah,
acting
yeah.
wacky.
That was
That's
on Showtime, right? I'm trying to remember.
HBO. Yeah.
HBO. Yeah,
Very so funny, so
yeah,
crazy, over the top, nutty, um, and just a really good show. And it's a half an hour, which is,
yeah,
it's helpful.
yeah.
And definitely moving along. Obviously, it's a baseball show. Um, I recommend going back to watch that if you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen. I mean, I haven't seen it in a
Definitely
while,
watch
but
it.
it's a funny show. But it just popped into my head. What are your thoughts? I never asked you this on Arliss.
So Arliss, I never really watched Arliss when it was airing. I caught maybe the end of it. I think because I think I became an agent right as it was wrapping up or whatever. So all right, here's the story. I
It's based
didn't
on
like
you.
Robert Wall because Robert Wall, when I was working for the Mets, one time came to the press box and he was acting like I don't know him at all, and
Yeah,
maybe this isn't the right take, but like he was acting like he was Arliss. He thought he was walking around the press box as if he was the running the show, and we were all just like, I wasn't the only one who thought this. We were all looking at him like, who the hell is this guy? So I kind of was disappointed in the way he was acting. So I just kind of never really got behind any of his work.
well, you said the operative word, acting. He was
Yeah.
acting.
Well, I guess if he was acting, but he wasn't. The show wasn't being taped
They
then.
wasn't being
It
taped.
was real. It was real life. I was, working in the press box for Major League Baseball. So
Great show. We'll see you on the next turnaround.
we'll see everybody next week.